for those who don't know about Amy, was so you were like pretty big. You had a show called Citizen Radio. You
Yeah.
interviewed Noam Chomsky. You had Rachel
Yeah.
Maddow. You had been on you've performed on Conan. You've been on the Chris Hayes show on MSNBC. You've done
Things are going great.
well. I mean, I think they're still gonna go great, but then right, and then that was a time when you were known as a male feminist, right? And you were sort of like, I guess, very sort of from what I've read, sort of a preachy kind of leftist.
Kind of. I mean, I thought it was, yeah, we'll go into it, and like I will 100% shit all over myself. But for the record, like in hindsight, back then, I mean, it was a lot of like, hey, rape's bad. Like, I didn't think it was like the craziest extreme shit in the world. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, when I was labeled that, even though I felt kind of uncomfortable because I feel like the term male feminist sounds like I'm like driving around in a van trying to like lure in the women with like Tegan and Sarah music. I went with it because I was like, oh, people like me, and like, yeah, I think women should have equal rights. So like, fucking sure, I'm a male feminist, you know, and I still believe the things I believe, you know.
Okay, but isn't saying rape is bad is so cringe because I don't know, maybe I'm like out of touch with reality, but is there like a pro like rape is great movement going out there right now that like
well
that we need
I
to,
would
like...
say fucking Armin, if you say that saying rape is bad is cringe, I would put you in that category.
Well, I mean, I just think like the only reason why I think it's cringe is because I'm like, oh yeah, also, you know what, murder, I'm gonna take a brave stance against murder here as well, like while you're at it.
I totally know what you mean. I mean, and again, like, it wasn't like I was like, welcome to the Jamie rape is bad hour. It was sort of just, you know, I mean, there was a lot of shit that I was learning for the first time about like the fucking statistics and about, and like, look, like it's way easier for me as like a dude to fucking go hit the like, I've never had to like cover my drink at a bar, like just talk about like basic shit like that, which again I still empathize with like all the bullshit I've gone through. I'm like, yeah, there's some shit that fucking sucks really hard for women that like I'll never have to deal with. But anyway, look at me, I'm going right back to the shit that got me in trouble. I really should have just made a living being the like fuck women guy and just being like, yeah, I was wrong, and then I can start the pro rape camp.
No. I think it's good. So let me just tell everybody first that tonight's like a big night because you have a new album coming out tomorrow. It's kind of a first for you in a way that, you know, well, you're going to talk about what's different about this album compared to the stuff that you've done in the past. So this
album is pro rape, to be clear. I guess that's the biggest difference.
Well, considering it's called 25% capacity, I don't know. So the album's called 25% capacity, right? And it's coming out tonight. Well, at midnight tonight, I guess, and then on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere. Jamie Kilstein, 25% capacity, and then tomorrow you're also going to do a live stream like this. We're just going to live comedy.
Yes. And by the way, I should say I love you guys and thank you for having me. And I understand this shit you've gotten. I can't wait to talk about that as well, because like I have thoughts on that too. And I miss the days where when I would go on podcasts, the introductions were like only like, you've seen this guy on Conan, funny man Jamie Kilstein, and now the intros are always like very long and they're like, he's been through a harrowing tale, like, and tragedy, and he's overcome and he hasn't killed himself, and welcome the desperate Jamie Kilstein. And I'm like, hi everybody.
But that's a lot more it's a lot more compelling, right? So what I wanted to kind of go through is your journey, because I think it's really interesting. There's some parallels with us. I mean, so you had this time when, you know, you had certain these political leanings, you know, which I think all of us do. We've all talked about how we're all leftist liberals. And then, you know, so you had that incident, right, where you had these allegations from women in your workplace, right? And
well, so I didn't have a workplace. So just to be like very clear before we get into like the allegations, which is like, at worst, if the articles were true, which a lot of them were not, I was accused of cheating, which I hate that I fucking did that, and of consensual one-night stands. And one girl said that I was flirting with her in DMs, and when she said she had a boyfriend, I stopped. And then another girl said that, woman, don't want to get in more trouble, said that we spent the night together. We actually didn't have sex. She said something like in the article that fucking trashed me, ruined that portion of my life, said that like she'd never been treated so well. Like, it was something like that. It was like, it was the nicest the guy's ever been to me, or some line like that. And then she said, but then he called me a road fuck on his podcast. And then Jezebel in the article said Jezebel could not find that quote because in parentheses, because I'm not talking about slaying road pussy on my feminist podcast that I host with my wife. That's an insane thing. If I did do that, though, I'm an asshole. I'm not like a sexual predator. And the problem is, and what still gets me to this day, and the reason we're talking about it, and the reason some of your listeners were like, are you going to ask him about it, even though this happened years ago, is the fucking headlines use words like sexual misconduct and like really horrible shit that make it look like I was accused of like
you're a Weinstein and not a Kilstein.
Thank you. Or Kilstein in that case. Fucking say it however you want. But yeah, dude. And so like, look, I don't want to play the victim. I fucking hate that I cheated. I hate that it happened. I still have a lot of shame about it. I've been working really hard on myself, blah, blah, blah. But like the fact that I'm even in like sexual misconduct conversations, especially now, like years later, like I've done a lot of good shit. I've had a lot of really lovely relationships, and 8 years after I cheated, something like that, 4 years after this article came out, which is again kind of minuscule in hindsight, that it still comes up, or if I get a gig, I'm still waiting for it to get canceled, or if I make a new like friend who's like a female. I like this happened the other day. I've made this pretty famous lady friend, like just like actual friends, and we became so close, and I had to like call her and be like, hey man, just so you know, like I still have a couple trolls who might like tweet you that shit, and like had to literally like tell like my homie about like my sex life and stuff like that. And and the other thing is, I was telling my manager before I got on this podcast, is a lot of the stuff I would say to defend myself sounds like crazy, like I don't know the way to say it.
The stuff
but like,
you used to slam other people for saying when they used to do themselves.
Yeah, and I think I even said this on Rogan a couple of years ago, where like, if a guy was like, she's making it up, she's jealous, she's crazy, and I'm like, that's fucking sexist, blah blah blah. And then when people were like, hey man, what happened to you? And I'm like, well, she's making it up and she's a little jealous and she's fucking crazy. And like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, I didn't want to be that guy. I would rather, and maybe this was a mistake, but I would have rather been, look, I was broke. I lost everything. I tried to kill myself, but I actually had a really nice girlfriend who stopped that. But I was getting offers from like a lot, and I'm sure you guys have too, where it's like, I'm sure more right-wing shows would rather have you guys on than shows you would align with politically. And that's still the case for me. I think I'm going on one lefty. It's not even a lefty show. I'm going to go on Rising next week because they get shit from the left as well. But like, Glenn Beck had me, like all these like right-wing places had me on, and I stayed true. I stayed fucking liberal. I talked about the liberal things I believe in, that I'm sure maybe even a lot of your audience doesn't. But then, I would talk about my problems with the left, blah, blah, blah. And I got offers. I had a book deal offer when I had no money to write that kind of book that, one of those books like Why I Left the Left and the Right Was Right. And I would have
I was going to say, like, what prevented you from becoming another Dave Rubin?
I almost did. And I just didn't believe it. Wasn't authentic. Like, I remember I had one night where I was in this apartment and I had like not a lot of money, but a lot of money for me, back in the day when I was married and stuff like that. And the podcast was doing really well and blah, blah, blah. And then I'm in LA. I'm in this like flea covered apartment. and my cat got fleas, and I'm crying holding my cat, who was like my only buddy, and I'm like apologizing to my cat, and I'm like, this is so fucking pathetic. And so that night, and I was like, you know what? And I was being rational. I wasn't like, I'm gonna sell out. I was like, I was like, you know what? These conservatives are being really nice to me. And the more I talk to them, the more I find out that like we disagree, but like they're nice dudes. And it's just, for me, it wasn't even money. It was just people being nice to me and me not having to feel like I'm like some fucking sex criminal, right? And then I go, you know, they want me on their shows more, and I could probably have my own show. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna check out this Ben Shapiro guy. I've never actually watched him. I'm gonna give him a watch. And then I went on YouTube, and then I watched Ben Shapiro, and then I went, nope, this is not for me. And then I was like, I can't do it. Like I didn't actually believe that shit. And at the best case scenario, I would have been like an Alan Colmes on like a, you know, show.
Hannity.
Yeah, where I'm just like, hey, don't say that. And like, that's it. With that said, in real life, and even on the podcast, I've had great conversations with conservatives I disagree with. And that's a thing I never would have done before, you know? And so that's really cool. But going completely full circle and dipping my toes into that world, I unfortunately, for my bank account and career, I'm like you guys, I'm like, I'm still pretty fucking left. And it's a little heartbreaking that my political beliefs align with a group that doesn't want me. But it's also, this is going to sound cheesy, but it's also kind of empowering knowing that nobody can tell me I believe something for like an angle because I'm positioning for something. And I'm like, no, my beliefs fuck me career-wise. And it's just how I feel. I believe in justice. I believe in, you know, social justice. I believe in, you know, these causes. And yeah, no one on the left wants me. So like, cool, man. I'm just going to like try to help people on my podcast and talk about mental health and fucking pro wrestle and enjoy my life instead of fighting with people on the internet.
Well, you're very articulate when you talk about all of this stuff. And it's actually really compelling. So, I think it's great that you're doing it. And, you know, so I read about this quite a bit, you know, before having you on. I actually hadn't before, but I kind of dug into it a little bit more. And I agree with you. I think those headlines, there are a lot of headlines. When you look at the actual allegations, the worst of them, it doesn't seem like that at most they're equivocal. So, I mean, the point is that, you know, right now you're here where you are. You've kind of been through what you've been through.
Yeah.
So let's just
and I get it. And I mean, the thing is that like I still want to fight for women who have had to deal with like actual predatory assholes. And you know what's crazy, because I still have so much shame about it. And what's crazy is whether it's my female friends, my feminist friends, or the majority of my podcast listeners are female. People will say shit like, I hate talking about this, but people will be like, I feel bad for you. And I realized that I kind of compartmentalized a lot of the shame I had and a lot of the shit I've gone through, where like there are times where like I had like a fucking anxiety attack when you were like, hey, we have to talk about this stuff. And like, I had to call my manager and blah, blah, blah. And my friends will be like, Jamie, you have PTSD. And I was like, no, I don't. Like, because I don't want to make it about me and I don't want to be the victim. And I even said this on Rogan's, where I'm not going to become one of those guys who's like, women fuck over men just as much. No, there are crazy fucking asshole women. There are creepy fucking asshole guys. And so that's where I was wrong, right? On the like believe all women, just like 100%. I was definitely self-righteous. I was definitely up my own ass. I thought I was doing the right thing. You know, Rogan always defends me when he brings me up, but sometimes he goes, yeah, Jamie just found like a niche and like ran with it. And I'm like, buddy, I wish that was true. I wish I had like that much career calculation where I was like, this is going to be great, or else it wouldn't have ended so tragically. Like I believed the shit I believed in. But what I was going to say is that I'm never going to be the person, even with what happened to me, who says that men being accused is like as bad as fucking rape or whatever. What I will say is that, and my female friends say this all the time, is that when you do falsely accuse somebody, or when you do, even the Aziz thing, when the Aziz thing happened, Me Too lost a lot of fucking steam. And the problem is like, does it fuck over men? 100%. But what's also not talked about is it fucks over women, and it fucks over women who were actually raped, who were actually in like emotionally abusive relationships, because now you're lowering the bar. And so it's so much easier for guys just to be like, oh, that's just another fucking Aziz thing or whatever.
Right. So like the way I look at it is that most of the accusations are legit, but if the false accusations, like I'm just making up numbers right now, if the false accusations go up from 0.5% to 2%, that's a huge increase. And that 2%, that going from 0.5% to 2% is going to do a lot of damage to the 98%, for example, of the correct accusations, right? Because it's going to be so much, 2%, like that's a lot of stories that people are going to use as an example for why we shouldn't take the accusation seriously, right? And if you spread ideas about believe all women without any investigation or any due process, you are going to encourage that 0.5% to increase to 2% by telling people that you're welcoming all accusations or whatever they are, right? It's still going to be a minority, but that's a major increase that is going to really hurt the 98% of the people that have serious accusations that need to be taken seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why what you guys do is important too, is like people who have experience, like more women should speak out. Like, I'm not going to be the fucking anti-Me Too guy, because I also think a lot of really good has happened. But I'm like, if more Muslims would speak out against extremism, if more women would speak out against that, if more cops would speak out against abuse, it's like, it's so bizarre that the groups we get affiliated with, we feel like, especially nowadays with social media, that we have to like blindly defend our group, when in reality, like if I'm a cop and I see that George Floyd shit, I'm going to be infinitely more furious than my buddies who aren't cops. Like, I'm a jujitsu guy, and if some guy was going around using like beautiful jujitsu to like attack women, I'm going to be like, hey, we should probably fucking stop that guy, right? Like, but instead, we don't do that. We just feel like, because we live in a time where everyone is just pick a fucking side. If there's no gray area, if you don't believe everything we believe, you're not a progressive anymore. If you don't believe everything, you're this, blah, blah, blah. You can't actually have conversations. And then people get so goddamn defensive that they won't call out their own, because they're like, I just don't want to get shit, man. And so they just kind of be quiet and back off.
It's kind of like what you were saying about when you were when you had the left, you're like, the left doesn't want me, but I saw Ben Shapiro and I was like, no, I'm not going to do this, because you want to stay true to your beliefs. And that's, you should be able to do that. It doesn't matter, like, your beliefs are your beliefs. Just because they're not aligned with this other tribe that tends to lean on the same side of things doesn't necessarily mean that they're any less legitimate. And that's one of the traps that, to avoid tribalism, people or to kowtow to tribalism, people tend to try to choose sides. So that's how you end up with the Rubens going on the left. But